Hello and welcome back to another Warcraft lore video. This time we're going to be covering Ner'zhul, definitely a very big character, and honestly, quite an interesting guy and a very interesting story. So he started off not really being the bad guy that we remember him as. He was a popular shaman who was renowned with his deep connection to the elemental spirits and just the spirits in general. His position of prominence and respect meant that while he wasn't the leader of the orcs because they didn't have one, he was the closest thing to a leader. If a lot of clans needed to get together, Ner'zhul was probably the guy who would be able to pull it off. He was the leader of the Shadowmoon clan, and they were a clan of, well, thinkers who would often consult stars, spirits, and the elements when making decisions and that kind of thing. They were to mysticism and, in general, not really the sort of ultra blood-crazed style like, say, the Bleeding Hollow. Now, his weakness was that underneath all of these, I suppose on the surface, good aspect, he did have a bit of a craving for power, and this is eventually what would be his weakness. So, one day he was communing with what he thought was the spirit of his deceased mate, Rolkan, but this was actually a mimic made by Kil'jaeden. The spirit told Ner'zhul to be wary of the Draenei as they were apparently treacherous, and eventually he was introduced to Kil'jaeden himself, and Kil'jaeden presented himself as the Great One, as a bit of a deity, and Ner'zhul thought that he was, in following the Great One's desire, he would be saving his people and getting the power that he secretly thought that he both desired, but he also thought he deserved it. He was able to convince the other orc chieftains to start attacking the Draenei, but as time went on, Ner'zhul realised that the Draenei bore a little bit of a resemblance to Kil'jaeden. Okay, Kil'jaeden had two big horns, and really, really big horns, which is one of the sort of things about Kil'jaeden. He had slightly different skin color, a little bit bigger, but a little bit of a resemblance to the Draenei, and he also thought it was a little bit strange that such a deity would have such a zealous hatred for Velen, especially when, before this, the Draenei and the orcs, while they weren't best friends, they didn't fight. They didn't really team up that often, but I get the impression that there was a mutual respect. So he thought this was strange, and he decided to go to Oshu'gun. Now, Oshu'gun is actually a Naaru ship that had crashed on the planet, but to the orcs it was called the Mountain of Spirits. And to his horror, the spirits there thought him a monster, and the real spirit of his mate told him that he was being manipulated by Kil'jaeden. Now, unfortunately for Ner'zhul, Gul'dan followed him there, and Gul'dan, being very greedy for power, basically said to Kil'jaeden that Ner'zhul's betrayed him, and he sort of found out what's going on, and Ner'zhul's powers were stripped from him, and he was relegated to a token position, while Gul'dan got Ner'zhul's older position as being, I suppose, Kil'jaeden's right-hand man on the planet. Well, right-hand orc. Now, during this sort of whole period where the orcs were descending into bloodlust and starting to use demonic magic, Ner'zhul was privy to a lot of things, but since he had no power and his actual powers were stripped from him, he couldn't do anything. And, so he was, I suppose, very unhappy for quite a while. Now, Gul'dan had eventually grown a little bit lazy, and he thought, well, Ner'zhul isn't really powerful, he's not a threat, and eventually Ner'zhul was able to see some secret Shadow Council documents, and these were containing the plans about feeding the orcs demon blood. Now, Ner'zhul he sort of knew demon blood, this will be the end of his people. And he tried to warn the different orc chieftains about this corruption, but the only one who had listened to him was Druatan, who is leader of the Frostwolf clan and is Thrall's father, who I'll cover in another video. Thrall's father, Druatan, he decided just to not partake in any of this. He decided to leave, and they were spared. Basically, the Frostwolves were spared from the worst of the demonic corruption. Still some corruption from the residual things going on the planet, but the sort of crazed thing that overtook, say, Grommash Hellscream, not a thing that happened to their clan. Now, after the destruction of the Dark Portal, Ner'zhul was wounded, and he spent 2 years recovering while the orcs fought amongst themselves. They had lost the war and they were stranded in a ruined Draenor, and while Draenor hadn't been destroyed at this point, supplies were low. The fell corruption of the planet and all the magic that had been thrown around and the warlock stuff, the place was twisted and damaged and broken, and the orcs wanted new places to conquer, and eventually, Terran Gorfiend, who I'll probably end up covering someday as well, devised a plan to open new portals to other worlds for them to conquer, and Terran and Ner'zhul sort of teamed up, with Ner'zhul becoming the leader of the Horde, and they ended up travelling back to get the Skull of Gul'dan, Book of Medivh, Scepter of Sagaris, and the Eye of Dalaran. These were just essentially items of very strong magical power that could be used to open the portals. Now, eventually Ner'zhul did open the portals, and this was the point where he actually betrayed the Horde. He rushed his followers through, and himself, and in opening the portals he destroyed the planet, creating what we know as Outland today. And really, just at this point, he was only concerned with his own power and all these magical items that he'd stolen away, sort of ran away with and all that stuff. He would have been a very powerful orc. But he was captured by Kil'jaeden immediately on the other side. He was physically torn apart, but his spirit remained, and I suppose still wanting to survive, he agreed to serve Kil'jaeden again, and was bound to the Frozen Foot throne in the Icecrown Glacier in Azeroth, and that is where he led the Scourge, up until the day that Arthas Menethil broke the Frozen Throne, and then the two of them, their sort of spirits and minds and stuff like that, melded together to form what we know as the Lich King. Now, of course, the spirit, I suppose, of Ner'zhul is merged with Bolvar Fordragon. I don't know if Arthas died with the Lich King's body. I'm not really sure what part of Arthas is stored in that helm, but essentially I think there's probably elements of the three of those guys floating around in there somewhere. Now, let's talk, well, I'll just go through what the Warlords of Draenor cite and what Blizzard themselves say about him. So, though Ner'zhul was a contemplative and forward-thinking orc, his vision of a united orcish culture had been eclipsed by the manipulations of his apprentice Gul'dan, and the bloody reality of the rising Iron Horde. His clan, the Shadowmoon, has always looked reverently at the stars to guide their fellows, and today the mysticism of these Death Sages nudges Draenor closer to obliteration. By saying Death Sages, perhaps they're making this clan look a little bit darker than it was. But yes, certainly an interesting character, and I think being mages, I'm quite sure that initially Garrosh doesn't really see their value in this whole Iron Horde thing. It is of course worth noting that Garrosh is not the leader of the Iron Horde, and while he's a plot device to get us there, he's not a major villain of the expansion. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you'd thumbs up, that would really help me out, and subscribe if you want to hear more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.